just to jump in, the title, Marketing Yourself as a Brand, I am just curious to know from each of you, what does that mean to you? And how do you see that being able to help others become their own brand effectively? Erin, could you start?
Absolutely. Thank you, Andy. And that's a great topic. A lot of people don't understand brand is literally everything that you do and how people see you, interface with you, in your presence, if you will, whether that's in this little rectangle or in person. And when it comes to the job search, particularly, it's important that you have a brand, i.e., what is your target? When I work with those people who are seeking career advancement or making a career move, it's important to understand what your target is and being able to express that across all your mediums, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your conversations, your networking, whom you reach out to, because we need to be strategic when it comes to reaching out to those people who will help us based on where we want to grow in our careers. So when it comes to your brand is that content, how you approach yourself, what's your presence, what are you putting out there? The 360-degree view, if you will. So it's much more than just a logo or a phrase. Like you heard mine, more impact, more income. Woohoo! Yes, it's much more than that. It goes much deeper than that. And I'd love to hear also from the rest of our panelists.
So calling on Jessica, just to get your view of that and how we can build and enhance our brands.
So exactly what Erin said, and I think you could probably have a broken record between the two of us because we do have a lot of the views. So instead of offering the same perspective, what I'll do is tie off of hers. So really, yes, it's everything that you present, but also, as you're putting it together, we're talking to marketing people, or a lot of marketing, and then there's some outside of the marketing. So with the marketing people, you understand what a brand is. You wouldn't sell a product without having a strong brand around it, because it helps awareness, it helps engagement, and it helps people to actually actionably interact with that brand in a way that's buying it and referring it. For the people outside, that's exactly what I said. You need to build something that you're known for, but how do you do that? And to me, a strong brand ties together really your areas of enthusiasm, your areas of expertise, and then the achievements that align and tie those aspects together.
Great. And Cindy, and probably a little bit more from your perspective around the aspect of a job seeker, because you see a lot of job seekers every day.
Sure, yeah, I do. And, I'll start kind of with the first part of the question, is kind of what was marketing yourself as a brand mean to me? I think it means knowing who you are before you show up. And knowing what you want to be known for. So knowing your strengths, knowing what makes you uniquely different. It's also being clear about where you want to end up. You've heard the saying, kind of dress for the position that you want, right? Dress for the person two positions above what you want. It's also, especially for job seekers, but in any personal branding, it needs to be authentic and true to yourself and who you are, and it needs to be consistent. An example, I guess, is, someone who's very introverted is going to have a hard time if they decide, I want to be an international speaker, and that's my brand, because you can't deliver on that if you have a panic attack when you stand in front of thousands of people and try to speak, right? At minimum for a job seeker, and I'm not sure if Erin said it, or I think it was Jessica, you need to know who your target is, who you serve. So who are you targeting? And for job seekers, it's hiring managers and recruiters, and for someone in a company, it's people internally within the organization, and how you serve them. So, and I think it's critical for marketers too, to be and stay competitive. It's make or break for job seekers in a competitive market. It's not always the most qualified candidate that I see that lands the job. It's the one who's best at promoting themselves and articulating and has the confidence, and you can develop that by knowing what your brand is. So
just a little quick follow-up. Cindy. So what if you're not a marketer?
I think if you're not a marketer, you still, um, if you don't create a brand for yourself, kind of in de facto, people are going to create it for you, right? So you still need to know what you want to be known for and where you're going. I think it helps to know that, and you can still give yourself a leg up within job seeking if you define that and know that and work on your personal branding. So I think it's so critical. And if a marketer doesn't do it in their career, forget it, right? But for other professions, if you're a job seeker, absolutely.
And Aaron, just going to you again, and with your book of Elevate Your Career, how do you get in career mode, someone is in, whether they're early in their career or in mid-career, what are the aspects that you coach those types of people in terms of this topic?
That's a great question, Andy. So first of all, you want to be crystal clear on what you're aiming for. Like I mentioned before, that target is so incredibly important because that drives what type of content you're going to put out there, how you're going to speak relevancy to those people you're connecting with. And to Cindy's point, those people during your job search strategy, that is the hiring manager, that is the recruiters, those are decision makers, HR individuals. So for those individuals, they want to see how you are relevant to the role you're applying to or for. So with that being said, what a lot of people make a mistake of is having a resume that's basically an obituary. It talks about everything you used to do, and that's great. However, let's talk about what you will do. And that's a big gap that I see that's missing in most people's strategies. They don't talk about what they will do and what they're excited about, because that's an important part of your brand. It helps you stand out from the plethora of other people out there job seeking right now, because there's a lot of people. It's a very competitive market. So in order to stand out, you need to have that intersection of your strengths, expertise, and interests clearly defined for yourself as an individual. Have that clarity, then understand what your target is, being able to design all of your content, your contributions, what you talk about in your profile. If you choose to post on LinkedIn, and if you're a marketer, you should be posting on LinkedIn. What is that? What is that message you're putting out there? Because it matters when it comes to getting real results and traction with those people who make decisions.
And I know for myself, you all have taught me, that thought leadership, in terms of social media, and that is a great vehicle to demonstrate. Again, whether you're a marketer or not, it definitely, I know, enhanced my visibility and enhanced my brand, if you will, by being more active and not just me putting stuff out there, but then interacting with others. So Jessica, I'm curious from your perspective, how can one throughout their career how do you operationalize, I guess is the word I think of, to become more crystal clear in your brand to others?
Okay, so and that's a really interesting question. So, and a good one, because I think I had given a talk last Friday, and one of the things that we had talked about is there are things that you love to do that you're not all that great at. Like there are people on American Idol that really should not be auditioning, but they love to sing, and bless them, they love it. And that's something that's great, but you need to be very clear with yourself about the things that you love to do versus the things that you enjoy doing that you're great at. So, and there's things that you may be great at. I know people that come to me and they're like, I keep getting asked to do project management because I'm great at it and I hate it. I want to be up at the strategic level telling the project managers how to really do it and do it well, but I keep getting, because I'm a top performer, I keep getting put into that area and I don't want to be there. So being crystal clear means saying no to some things, being prepared to walk away when the opportunity isn't the one for you, or volunteering for the things that are going to really allow you to stretch and grow in the areas that you want to grow and learn what you're great at. And then being able to put that on paper, because those same people that hate project management, if you look at their resume, it's all about what they've done as a ground level project manager, and there's barely anything on the strategic level, which is what they're really wanting to do. So that's, I think, the most important part is knowing what you love, what you're good at, but being able to put that on paper, being able to take the assignments that reflect that, saying that in your interactions with your manager, yeah, I love this. I want some projects that allow me to lead somebody doing this. Being able to articulate your brand in a way that that helps you move your career forward in the way that you want it to go forward.
Okay, great. So there's always a value to any brand, and I really want to go into the areas of, some of the aspects of what someone's skills are. You all have discussed some of those things. What is it in terms of, you've got a skill set that maybe to your point, Jessica, it matches some job, but maybe not the job you're in or the job you've been in, but it's the job you may want at some point in your career. I wanted to kind of understand your perspectives on, and Cindy, I'll start with you because you have clientele that are those that are hiring. What is it that your clients are looking for in terms of a person as a brand, a job seeker as a brand, and what are the things that you guide those job seekers toward that idea?
Not sure that I understand the question. What are my clients looking for in a brand? As I'll tell you what they're looking for, and what all clients are looking for, and what you need to do as a job seeker. They're looking for humanity. They're looking for the things that are, obviously the skill sets and the qualities that, you can do the job. You have the, whatever, if you're a project manager, you have the organizational skills, you know how to use project management software. You are crazy detail oriented, right? But I guarantee you, if there are 3 finalists for an interview with a brand for a project manager, all 3 of them have those things, right? So your difference is being able to figure out a way to make a connection. I always kind of do that. You're making a connection with the person on the other end of the video right now, right? Or when we start getting back in person, it'll be a little bit easier to do it with the person that's in the room. But they want someone who fits in with the team, who fits in with the culture of the company, who they can go have a beer with after work, and who has the experience. I mean, that's the minimum, right? The minimum is being able to do the job and having the qualifications, but they're looking for someone that has the right personality fit and fits in with the culture, and that's going to achieve and do the things that the role needs to do. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, and sorry, I wasn't clear, but I went probably 3 different ways with one question. But I think it's just more of a building the value of a brand, which if you're in marketing, that takes a lot of effort, and it's not just one thing in a lot of cases. And I kind of see my takeaway a little bit of what you said is also not just about one thing for a job seeker or someone trying to get promoted. It's you've got to continue to build regardless of where you're at in your career, but it's just trying to understand, I think it's critical for wherever you are in your career to understand where your bosses are in that sense. And are you matching that? Erin, I'm curious to know from your perspective how one might be able to understand and wherever in their place of work or their place in their career, how can someone understand what others think of their quote unquote brand?
I'm really glad you asked that question, because that's why I wrote my book. That's what my book is all about. Elevate Your Career for More Impact and Income is all about actually finding out that my brand years ago was not what I thought it was. In fact, I was nowhere near where I thought I was. And it's interesting because we get so wrapped up in being the technical expert and having the right credentials and the right education, the right types of experience. It's not that these things aren't important, but to Cindy's point, it's more than your technical expertise. It's much more than that. It's being a human. It's showing up in the workplace as someone who other people know, like, and trust. Because here's the thing. You may drive your credibility, but you do not determine it. Other people do. And your presence needs to match what you feel that it is. So what are you putting out there? In other words, how you show up needs to match what you want it to be. And oftentimes that's not necessarily the case for those people who I coach, for example. Will find out through feedback and 360-degree reviews, to answer your question, Andy, to really understand what is our brand to other people? How are we showing up to them? And where are those potential roadblocks that we need to shift, move, overcome, obliterate, what have you, in order for us to see the advancement or the opportunities we want? And what's interesting is some people are like, oh gosh, do I have to reinvent myself? Am I a bad person? No, you're not a bad person. And no, you don't have to reinvent yourself. You'd probably be amazed at how small yet significant shifts really make all the difference.
And Jessica, over to you. Do you have any suggestions toward that end of how someone might be able to understand better what others think of themselves?
Well, Erin mentioned it herself with a 360 review. That's a great opportunity. And when you do it, look at people like colleagues, clients. It's not, a lot of times we'll go to a manager and and then they feel pressed to go to their manager. And maybe that's not the best person. You need to be really realistic about the people whose opinion that you value and that have a history of promoting your success or who have given you that feedback to show that they're a trusted person to ask in the past. And that would be people, you want to work for somebody who you have mentored or who has worked for you, somebody that you are on level with, somebody you report to, and a client. If you go in those 4 different areas, or customer or whatever it is, those 4 areas, and maybe then somebody in your network who is at a similar stage in their career or that you value in a mentor level. And what I tend to find out is when people do those 360 reviews, one, they find out aspects that they're underselling about themselves. But the other thing is, a lot of times we're a lot harder on ourselves than they are on us. So things where we don't think we excel, even though we love it, you'll hear, hey, you're really good at this, because the things that we love most, we tend to be hardest on ourselves about because we want to excel in those areas. And then to tie into what Cindy said, that when you're sitting there in the interview chair, articulating those areas can be tough because there are people who, and I think the 3 of us probably, because of what we do, you can notice we're expressive. We talk, we gesture, we're very outwardly enthusiastic about the things that we love. And people who can do that when they sit in the interview chair tend to have more rapport established and have a better end result. Yeah. So for those of us who aren't the ones that are the sharers and the expressive, there are many of those, and they are just as good as everybody else. But that's where you need to be able to say things like, I am enthusiastic, verbally express it. I am enthusiastic because of this. This excites me because of this, and start using those words, because just because your face doesn't necessarily light up, you can still use the words that express it to create those meaningful conversations. And that's going to overcome the, the gestures and those kind of things.
Right. Yeah, I just add, I learned long ago the term outside-in thinking, and I learned it from a marketing perspective, but then translated once, as I got further in my career, translated that into my own. So understanding that I may be, or any of us may have confidence in ourselves about what we're doing, but then, and we talk about performance reviews and 360 reviews, but even as an individual, you can still ask the right questions to people all around you to see how you come across.
To tie in to what you said, Jessica, and also you as well, Cindy, we touched a little bit on how those people who might identify with being more reserved may have some opportunities, particularly when it comes to remote work environments or showing up on a camera. How can we come across as sharing our brand when we're not necessarily that emotive? I mean, not everybody bobs around in the camera, is all vivacious like the 3 of us. And by the way, you're an awesome human being just because you don't have to bob around on the camera. To Jessica's point, you can give verbal context. That's really important. So research is showing now that words we choose actually matter so much more than they did prior to last year. It's very interesting how the dynamic and how we connect and what's showing up and if it resonates with us is very different because we're having to interface in large remote work environments. I have to say that, I don't know, I'd love to hear from the chat folks, people putting in the chat, are you looking forward to being remote most of the time? Because that has a lot of its own challenges. So for those of you who aren't necessarily huge emoters, just find that sweet spot that's authentic to you, give verbal context, and it doesn't hurt to smile maybe a little bit more because that helps in this particular culture. It helps just send across that message that you're happy to be there, right? And you will get face muscle hurt after a while.
Great, thank you. So just throw it out there, I'll let you all fight out for this answer. So what are some of the common mistakes you've seen people make in terms of establishing their brand? Okay, Jessica, I'll throw it to you.
Well, I think, a lot of times is there's two big things. And one is shaping your brand for a role rather than searching for the roles for you that really allow your brand to shine. So I have worked with people that say, I hate data analytics. They're in marketing and they hate the data analytics piece, but then they'll give me a resume. And because you're in marketing, for the ones of you that are, you can chameleon it in and show that and do that area. And so they'll send me a resume and materials that are just completely tuned for data analytics. And I'm like, don't you hate this? And they're like, yeah, but this is a good organization. And being able to walk away when something doesn't fit your brand and fit the things that you're going to really love is not only something that's integral to knowing what your brand is, it's a point of power. The first time you say, no, this is a great opportunity, but it's not going to support my brand and my end goal that goes along with that brand, you're going to feel a lot more powerful in the long run. And then the second part is, as you're doing this, you have a public brand that is beyond. So every time you interact on social media, in public, at the water cooler, the things that you say, the things that you choose to say about others and interact with others, that also affects your brand. And one thing my grandfather used to tell me growing up, he was a plant manager for many years. And one thing that has stuck with me, he'd say, darling, one all shucks will ruin 100 atta girls. You need to recognize that you are constantly building and presenting that brand in every interaction professionally and even some personally. So that's really the two aspects I see.
Great. And Cindy, from your perspective, what are your thoughts as far as mistakes you've seen and how to avoid them?
I think the biggest thing for me, and you kind of, people that have followed me or come to Coffee and Careers on a weekly basis know, one of my values is being real, being authentic. And I think that's such a key part of brand. So, my biggest mistake that I see is not being authentic. Now I have a lot of others for job seekers, right? Not taking time to understand strengths, not having confidence in what you bring to the table and kind of being able to articulate it. If you need someone's help, you have 3 professionals on here that can help you do that. Being able to brag about yourself. And I think if we want to really generalize it, men are very good at that and do it well. Women sometimes have a hard time feeling like they're being cheesy or bragging or whatever, and might need a little bit more help, coming up with ways to kind of put themselves out there, right, and brag, and so, I see that. I see people that are, from a career, and I'm always going from the job seeker perspective, right, not taking the opportunity on LinkedIn to really utilize your headline and not using this a professional picture on LinkedIn, or not having a professional email address, not having any. Here's one of my biggest things, and it's not a branding thing, but it kind of is, because what do you want at the end of your brand message and your campaign to get a job? You want someone to reach out to you. I can't pick up the phone and call you or write out an email, right, if I don't have your contact information. So, have your email address and your phone number in your LinkedIn signature and your LinkedIn about, if you're comfortable with it. Look, you can't go incognito when you're on a job search, right? I know people are very private about their information, but you need to be found, you need to be reached, because right now it's a competitive market. And if I'm not calling you, I'm calling the person that's easier to get in touch with, and I'm putting them in for a role. And it's so much easier if I have someone's LinkedIn signature on their LinkedIn page. I see people to my point about being able to talk about your strengths. I see people underrepresent their qualifications. I also see people overrepresent their qualifications. Again, you have to be authentic and you have to be truthful. Unprofessional pictures on LinkedIn. Don't show yourself, at the keg or taking a shot or whatever. It has to be, that's one thing that investing in, or having a friend help you get a really good picture of yourself, is really worth it. I have another thing that speaking of video interviews or phone interviews, not taking those seriously and treating them as if you're walking in person and being that prepared. And you almost even have to be more prepared for a video interview, because you can have technology go wrong and totally throw you off, right? Being a different person. So if you are heading to an interview, say you're going there, the minute you walk out the door, you are your brand image. You are the presence that you want everyone to see. It goes to dismissing the internal recruiter, dismissing the agency recruiter, being rude to the receptionist, driving in the parking lot and someone cuts you off and giving them a signal that you wouldn't give to most people, or getting in an altercation. I have a manager who is on this call, actually, who had that happen to her in the parking lot, and she came in, got ready for an interview, and when the person walked in to the interview, it was literally someone who had yelled at her in the parking lot, and the interview ended. So you are representing your brand when you are out in public. So.
Yes, I completely agree, because I think I make sure I just think I'm being watched the minute I get out my car door and walk to wherever, when I was in the times if I was interviewing. So
now you might even be watched when you're in your house. So
right, or am I the one watching candidates if I'm in that position? So Erin, taking that a little bit more in your realm of a professional, what additional things, if someone's already in their career versus in a job seeker mode, that you coach others to enhance their brand and to help them move up in the world, let's say?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, I have one that helps job seekers and those people who are currently employed and looking for more opportunities or career advancement. And that one thing is own your impact. You all have so much more impact than you give yourselves credit for. We take the back seat. We sweep our gifts under the rug. We do not show up for ourselves. And if you are a person who shows up for other people, my biggest question for you, are you showing up for you? Are you being your own best friend? And it starts with this. It's a very tactical thing you can take away and do today. Do you have what I call an impact inventory? It's literally a list of all the things, all the contributions you've made, the special projects you've led, the things that stand out in your career history, your highlights. Do you have that list, and are you continually adding to it as a professional as you evolve? Whether you are job seeking or not, this list will help you tremendously Own your impact and express it when it matters most. It'll also give you a lot of insights into how you're showing up. Are you showing up and saying yes to the right projects where you actually do shine, that you want to drive your career in that direction? Or are you following the open door syndrome, just walking through one open door to the next? So continually add to this impact inventory. And for those of you who think, well, I don't know how much, it's so hard to quantify, we're in marketing, oh, well, we might have gotten more likes or more followers, but how does that quantify into business results? Just stick with it. Note what matters and what impact you can metricize. And for those you cannot metricize, speak to that. But it still matters. And it matters whether you are fueling your resume, fueling your LinkedIn profile, or that interview conversation that you need to quote unquote brag. And I would have to say, you're not bragging, you're stating facts. If you want to be authentic and credible, you're literally stating facts about what you've done. We think of it as bragging because we're not comfortable doing it. We're not taught to think this way. And I'll share with you a little bit about how I, years ago, got comfortable, so you can maybe think about it a little bit differently. So years ago, in continuous improvement, I literally had to justify my paycheck. For the projects I led, if Ed and I did not show a demonstrated impact and results to the executives I reported to, I probably would not get resources for the next project, and I might need to find a new job. So that fueled definitely a focus to speak in terms of how what I did mattered. And fast forward to today, that helps me help other professionals understand how they matter, how you have impact. And yes, you do have impact, even if you say, well, I'm just doing a great job. Well, okay, think about what would happen if you didn't, right? Maybe you're in the business of avoiding risk, like my husband, who's a reliability engineer. Not sexy, really important, right? So, it's things like that. We need to give ourselves credit. We need to be our own best friend. We need to invest that hour every quarter in adding to our list of impacts so that we can own that when it matters. We're looking for a salary raise, a promotion, performance review time, and beyond.
Great answer. Jessica, I like going to you, shift gears a little bit, is maybe not so much. How have you helped others to differentiate themselves?
Okay. So that's a great question. And it actually is going to tie into what Aaron said. Understanding your impact is not exactly the same as understanding your results. A result is an immediate thing that you garnered for a company. Impact is long lasting. So the difference between, any good salesperson can sell, but understanding how those sales contributed to the long-term mission of an organization, how you left them better when you left than when you came in, that's the impact that you bring beyond just the results. So the results, absolutely, those are important. They're part of the brag book. But when you go in, we keep talking about differentiating ourselves from other professionals, and that's easy to do. With a few results, I can differentiate you from, into the top 25%. But let me tell you something. The top 1% are the ones that come in for the final interviews, not the top 25%. You're not trying to differentiate yourself from other professionals. You're trying to differentiate yourself from the best professionals. So what are you doing that makes you better than other people that do it well? And understanding that impact beyond the simple one-time results. And that also goes to the obit theory that Aaron had, which I love, Aaron, that's amazing. But it goes to that statement. How is that a continuing thing that you just continually, and whether when you started out as a coordinator into a manager, into a director, what are the things that you just continually bring that allow you to leave an organization better than when you joined it?
Yeah, got it. I think another way I say it, again, because I've been a job seeker more than once, and I know several people on this call have been as well. It wasn't until I realized the resume is a marketing document. And, part of that is you've got to show your results and your impact. And a lot of recommendations is, quantify as much as you can. I want to kind of get your takes on what are some of the better ways to quantify results to be an impact? Because I've also done the same thing And I also, in my current role, encouraging people to do the same thing for their upcoming performance reviews. I really want this, you need to market yourself. So I want to find out from you all, how does one market themselves in terms of showing, whether it's a resume or performance review, as a marketing type of tool? Cindy, I'll start with you.
Sure. So, you know, I mean, and it's your resume. There are so many marketing tools and job search tools, right? For a job seeker and and these are things that you build while you're in your career. I mean, we are in such a disruptive environment right now that, you know, you don't have what you used to have in the 80s or in the 90s, where, you know, I'll have clients. I have one client who says, you know, well, someone hasn't been they've only been at their job for 5 years. And I go, no, that's, you know, people are in job after job. So you are constantly building your marketing materials. You are constantly looking for new opportunities to add to your resume, and build those marketing tools. You know, with your resume, I will say one thing. It is a marketing document, yes. Do you want to go overboard and be incredibly creative and make it a tool that is just beautifully designed and then, you know, one image? And no, you need to keep it consistent with what a resume. And coming from a recruiter, I mean, Aaron and you and Jessica, y'all probably don't look at resumes all day long, like one after another and whatever. And I do. And when I go through 10 resumes and then I get to the 10th and it is completely different than the layout of everything else, and I have to try to find what I'm looking for. I'm looking for bullets. I'm looking for, you know, impact and results. So what we mean by that is numbers, percentages, you know, dollars, and, you know, being able to articulate it that way. That's the results in you know, a resume. So, you know, how do you do that if you're like a graphic designer, right? And it's, you know, created and designed 200 plus print ads with, and never mind, landing pages. Let's get in the 21st century, right? And so, you know, with an average ROI of 20%, something like you're putting numbers in. And that's where I think working with, you know, a professional can really help you with creating a resume. I guarantee you that if Aaron or Jessica or I were to talk through your career, we can probably put a number to about anything, right? And probably even multiple numbers. You know, how long did it take? How many team members were on the team? You know, you know, did you bring it in under budget? Those are the things that you're looking at. Did that answer your question, Andy? I'm sure if Aaron or Jessica would be interested in hearing your take on it too.
Yeah, no, Jessica, how about yourself?
So kind of building off of what Cindy said, you know, when the last time that when I was working with building teams, yeah. So I have looked at I have done the many resumes, and what winds up happening, and let me just tell you from a recruiter perspective, and she'll probably agree with us, there are 3 piles. There's this is great. We need to look at this person. These people are okay. So you sit there and you go, great, okay. But then there's a third, and it's the round file, and it's the trash can. So those are the ones. And that's how you think. And you're just mechanically sitting there doing that. And then these that wind up in this amazing pile, when you hear about that 6 seconds that recruiters look at your resume, this nice little candidate pile, they get that second review. So if you don't have those percentages and things that just pop off the page, then it's going to go into the okay, and the okay is going to people that have the right titles, maybe, and the right experience, the right employers, maybe that kind of thing. But the ones that get in that pile for further review, those are the ones that have easily identifiable metrics. And I love what Cindy said. It's not always just the results, but the metrics. So if you let a team, how big was your team? Was it global? Was it regional? Was it national? Specifics that really let people understand the flavor and the character and the context of your role are going to really set you apart from others who just have let a team, so that helps. And then she said something about metrics. Oh, when you don't have easily identifiable metrics for your role, so maybe you are a graphic designer and you don't have a return on investment that's easy, that's when you need to know how your role contributes to the organization, because the organizational goal may have been 27% more traffic to the landing pages from social media, and they used your graphics to help do that, then you were a key contributor to that. And that is absolutely authentic. It's 100% accurate, and you need to have that on your resume. So understanding how it contributes to the goals of your division and of your organization as a whole.
Can I add something that I didn't say that I have seen lately on resumes and accomplishments? And that now is not the time to give credit to everybody else instead of yourself. So, where you're in an organization and you're working, you use the word we a lot, right? When you're interviewing, I want to know what you have done, what your part was in a team. If you're a designer, if you're a developer, if you're a marketing person, and you have a case study or a portfolio, not only do you show the project, but you say what your specific role was. And if you can't say that, then I have a little bit of a question whether what exactly, how much were you involved in that project? So you really have to be able to say what you did, and it should be real quick for you, And
Yes.
Tying that back to brand, really quickly, and tying that back to the brand discussion, focus on the ones that you want to do in the next role. So if you've done a lot of one thing, and that's not really, it doesn't matter if what you want to do next was only 20% of your role, focus on that 20%. You don't have to focus on the 60% of your role that you didn't really like and you don't want to focus on in the next part. That's part of understanding how all this ties into your brand and how you present yourself.
Yeah, great. Erin, I'm going to shift gears again a little bit more. And I know you've talked to our group about the future of work, and you brought it up earlier about virtual. It seems like we're maybe going to, again, a hybrid model versus all virtual. But I want to get what advice do you have for either job seekers or those in career in providing, their brand experience to others, whether it's virtual or in person? What type of things would you recommend someone think about or do in that regard?
Really showing up how you want to show up and making sure that your actions are consistent with that message that you want to show up. So if you have a specific brand focus that's authentic to you, I don't recommend trying to adopt a mask when you go to work. If you feel like you have to don a mask to go to work, you will get frustrated, you will get burned out, and you will be looking for another job. And perhaps the only person you need to blame is yourself, because you felt like you couldn't show up as your authentic self. However, if you feel like you cannot show up as your authentic brand in that workplace because of workplace environmental issues, then yes, look for another job. And going back into making sure that brand is communicated consistently, you need to identify what actions, what words, what phrases, how are we showing up to, I think it was either Cindy or Jessica or both shared, coming into the interview, or how you act in the parking lot matters. You need to be the embodiment of your brand. And that's one reason why it has to be authentic to you. Can you imagine wearing a mask for most of your adult life? Absolutely not. So we need to have that brand be consistent, making sure that our actions, our words, our mindset matches that presence that we want to demonstrate to the world. Hopefully that answered your question a little bit.
It does for me, yes. Hopefully it will be for our audience, which we'll find out because there's a lot of questions that we've got on the Q&A, which is great. And I want to get to that because there's some really good engaging questions. I guess I want to kind of tie in a little bit more of how often does someone need to overtly work on their brand versus just make it a habit. Jessica, could you give us your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you asked, because there's something you said earlier about job seekers versus people who are, in their career. And I would kind of say you should always keep a job seeker mentality, because that's a growth mentality. What's next for me? What is really going to help me, build who I am as a professional and grow? Because the worst thing you can do is sometimes we get into roles and they offer good salary, good benefits, and it's a decent work experience, and we stagnate. And then we've been there 5-6 years in the same role and realize we've never taken advantage of those growth and development opportunities. And we're trying to figure out what's next and put together results. And no, you should always be looking how to grow within your organization, even if that's just from a project and areas of authority and oversight, and not just titles, but even that, there's opportunities for promotion and growth within your organization, external to the organization. Send your resume out every once in a while to an ideal job, see what happens. That kind of stuff keeps you fresh and keeps you on your toes about your brand. So every time, you're not feeling challenged, or you have those days where you're like, I'm just a little bit burnt out on this, start looking at what you've accomplished since you last looked at it. Make sure it's all down on paper, your brag book or whatever you want to call it, your impact book, whatever you want to call it. Make sure that's up to date, refreshed, and cross out the ones that are no longer the things that you're enthusiastic about, because those are going to change. Your areas of enthusiasm, your brand doesn't stay the same. It's not, 10 years ago, I wasn't like, hey, I want to go speak to audiences. And maybe I was, but it was in a totally different area. And so your knowledge about yourself, bring that in. The things that adjust and change within yourself need to be reflected within the adjustments you make to your brand. So you should be looking at it at least yearly.
You just said something that's really has been a topic in some of the conversations I've been in, just your brand's always changing. That's such a statement that I think many people don't think about, even again, as marketers. And even if you're marketing a real corporate brand, and we've seen brands go stale. And I know personally mine has gone stale on more than one occasion in my career. But, on the flip side, we all start out doing something and then life happens, life changes. But I think the key here is that we got to be cognizant of that all the time, to your point. Erin, what about you in that same theme? What is it you see, and what do you recommend? Are there ways to measure this or keep track of someone and how they progress in building their brand?
We're back to metrics a little bit, but when it comes to tracking and keeping on track with your brand, it's really more around establishing what your career goals are, what that career advancement plan is, and then establishing the right milestones, establishing the right metrics for yourself that are realistic and feasible with your work-life balance, structure being kept in mind, all of you overachievers out there that are working 15 hours a day. So when you're talking about brand evolution, that is something I'm very, very passionate about, because I have personally shifted my brand, my career path 5 times. So for anyone considering, if I sign up for this plan, I establish for this plan, I have to hold to this plan for the rest of my life. No, that's not what we have to do. And we also need a plan, because most people plan their vacations more than they ever consider planning their careers. So with that being said, now is a great time to think about, hey, if I followed this current career trajectory, what does that look like for me? And is it something that I align with? Does it match my priorities in my life? Does it match my values? Is it who I am? Does it align with my personal brand, that authentic brand that's me? And if not, what shift looks good? How can I line up that intersection of my strengths, expertise, and interests to springboard into something new? What does that look like? Defining that target and reverse engineering from that target. Knowing that, giving yourself space and grace, that this will shift. Life happens. Pandemics happen. You get married, you have kids. You have your adult parents moving in with you. Life evolves, and so must we. When it comes to metricizing our evolution, if you will, it's really about having that project management mentality and understanding how to manage your own project. your own career development project. Because here's the thing, whether I highly recommend, by the way, the advice to always be looking, because that encourages you to always be adding to your impact inventory, to be always looking for how you can show up at the workplace, how what you do matters, understanding strategic vision, understanding your own strategic vision, really being present versus being in your career canoe, drifting down the lazy river of life, and you might have a paddle, but you're not sure what to do with it, or if it even matters if you paddle, or if you're paddling, you're probably paddling in the wrong direction against your own strengths and interests. So, having that vision and being present, I would have to say the biggest difference between those people who succeed in their career and those people who don't are people who are intentional and present when it comes to their career development. Full stop.
Full stop. That's great. That's great. I want to go to some of these questions we've got on the Q&A board and see your answers on those. So the first one I'll pick out is, how do you manage your expertise and presence in your brand if you're over the age of 50 and seeking a new path? Cindy, why don't we start with you?
About the same way you would manage it if you're the age of 30 and seeking your own path. Seriously, I mean, if you think age is a problem, it's going to be a problem. And I think it's the same thing. It's showing results. It's showing accomplishments, impact. It's having a passion for what you do. And it is staying, I say this a lot, because not only, I thought Jessica had a really good point about it's the 1%, right, that end up in the final interview. It's this pack that is, and one of the things that I use when I'm looking at that second pile is, do they have recent and relevant experience? So being a lifelong learner and staying on top of things. I'll give you a couple of examples. I had someone come and speak at one of the organizations that I'm in, Chris Ferris with Pierpont Communications. He's an amazing speaker and talking about digital. And he literally, when he stood up, said, I'm giving this presentation today. If I were to come back in 6 months, it would be an entirely different presentation. And that's what I mean by staying relevant, and keeping up with the classes and understanding, the classes of new technologies and news and knowing what's recent and relevant. And I saw Raisa commented on Chris Ferris, and she's another person that probably does that and can, but you need to keep current. And another example, someone else who's on this call right now is Divya Vicentini. I was talking to her yesterday, and she talked about how she is taking, and she's not a graphic designer, she is taking a course on user experience design to be able to understand what's down the road and where we are going and be up on the new technologies. That's the main thing that I think I'd say to someone that's over 50 is you need to stay recent. You need to stay relevant. You need to show a little bit of, apparently I would say more. So let me give a couple of other things. Have some enthusiasm. And, when you go into an interview, most likely someone's going to be interviewing you that's younger. Don't have the attitude of, well, I've been there, done that, because that's not what they want. You need to show that you're excited, you're passionate, you can, and you are adaptable. There's something called the adaptability quotient. How can you adapt and how quickly do you adapt and all of that? So, hopefully that was enough of an answer for
it is a great answer.
Friends.
Yeah, well, I'm in that category, and
I am too. Yeah,
I'm not going to say, but I my own answer is, yeah, you got to show your value regardless of what age you are, and it's tough, but you got to get all that out of your mind. And I know we've had this conversation in our job forward group where people like the system's broken, and I don't want to get into that. But part of it is to fight against that and go, no, it's about you and your brand and the value of that brand, right? So you get there, but exactly, you're spot on, Cindy. Age is irrelevant when it comes to your approach toward showing your value and continuing a career however which way. So going back to another question about the 360-degree review from Lisette. Hey, Lisette, glad you could make it. Do you have examples on what we could ask our colleagues, direct reports, and managers for doing a 360 view of ourselves? Jessica, I'll start with you.
Well, that's a great question, and really, there's no 100% best answer to that because it's going to depend on your goals in what you're trying to do. So, an example with, and I think Erin may be even a better person to ask about this one because I think she does them more often than I do. But you can ask anything like areas that you really enjoy working with me on. What are the places where you think that I really shine as a professional, as a colleague, as a manager? What areas, if you could give me any advice, what would it be? Asking them basically to, and then if you have areas that you're really wanting to focus on, you can ask them about that. What if you love, project management, what would you say about me as a project manager? What would you say about me as a team leader? What are the things that you're wanting to focus on and to ask them? But I really do think this is a better question for Erin.
Well, that's Erin. Go ahead.
Oh, Jessica, come on now. Well, I have actually a cheater answer for you because I actually have resources on my website, coachyurban.com, under books. Actually, as part of my best-selling book was to give a free resource for those people who are interested in developing maybe a survey to have those top behavioral questions that help people get insight into how other people see them as a brand. Now, here's the thing. When we ask people straight up, one-on-one, hey, so what do you think about me, eh? And they're like, oh, I'm not telling you the truth. Because people don't want to hurt our feelings. So if there is an opportunity for us to improve, chances of someone showing us the ugly is not very high. And also know that we're blind to our blind spots, but other people aren't. So they'd see it, trust me, even if you think they don't. So what I encourage is anonymous surveys. There's tons of different apps out there. You can create your own anonymous survey and get that information. And if you don't want to do that, you're like, oh gosh, that's a lot of work. No problem. Here's what you can do. First, establish psychological safety and establish how much someone's candid feedback means to you, number one. And if you're super honest with yourself, you probably know an area that you could improve upon. So, like to Jessica's point, ask them, hey, why do I shine the brightest? And, I was thinking about improving my listening skills because perhaps you might have a sneaking suspicion that you interrupt people and you don't. And here's the thing. Here's what happens with us. Psychologically, it becomes identified with a part of our brand. Oh, I'm super impatient. Anybody out there in chat world? I mean, do you actually have something like that as a part of your brand? I'm super impatient, or I'm a talker. We brand ourselves, and sometimes those brands can hurt where we want to go with our career. So if you're super honest with yourself, you probably know an opportunity that you can lead that one-on-one engagement if you don't want to create an anonymous survey, which I highly recommend.
Great. So I have another question.
Sorry, and I'm just going to add a question that I use on our referrals, reference checks, that I think is a good one to ask. And it's if you had an unlimited budget for training, what would you recommend? Where would you send me for training? And what kind of development would you invest in me? That was.
Yeah, so a question a candidate should be asking a potential employer?
No, for 360. I use it for reference checks. I ask references that about the candidate I'm looking at, but I think it gives you some insight in where you might want to, develop.
Okay, next question. How would you handle the image control of your personal brand when the people viewing it have their own subjective lenses? We touched on this, but let's get a little bit down deeper into it. Aaron, I'll ask you to respond there. You were touching on the previous answer. Let's dive a little bit deeper in that
Okay.
lens.
So it was
Subjective. So how do you handle the image control of your personal brand when the others that view you have their own subjective lenses?
So that's a good question, because, and this comes, I'm going to give you some information based on the fact that I coach not solely people who are more reserved, but quite a few people who are more reserved and identify with that. I either coach really super driven people or people who are more reserved. So whatever. Regardless, when I'm coaching these individuals, when we're talking about subjective lenses, one of the reasons I see, particularly with high performing reserved individuals, there always seems to be a dissonance between how they feel like they're showing up and how other people are perceiving them. And one of the reasons is there's a lack of data. When one doesn't provide verbal context, or you're not as expressive, or you don't talk with your hands, you're not giving out as much nonverbal or verbal data, perhaps you talk more abbreviated, then the people who you're interfacing with, well, they will fill in the gaps for you. And that's just a phenomenon of our human brains. Our human brains will not accept not having the answer. So in absence of having enough data, they will form their own assumption based on their own mental bias. Not yours, theirs. So it's a good idea to clear assumptions and be able to provide verbal context, be able to show up how you mean to, and provide enough data to those people you interface with so they're getting the right message. And there's not necessarily this gap of misunderstanding where they feel like they need to fill it in with their own assumptions. So while we cannot say that, oh, let's do away with bias, because all human beings have bias, that's how we get through the day, whether we like coffee, we don't like coffee, whether we like peppermint versus chocolate, doesn't matter. Those are all biases. So we can't really say, let's just erase that, but how are we working with that? And are we aware of it, right? So we know that other people judge us by how we show up. We just need to make sure that we're showing up with the brand and enough content, enough data. It would be like if you put in marketing terms, like, oh, I have a brand, but I'm only going to put one post out a week. Doesn't work, right? So hopefully that answered your question. People do have subjective lenses. People do have their own opinions. Here's the thing, you're not going to change other people. Sorry. However, you have all kinds of control over you.
I have something to add to that too. Steve, I see that was a question from you. So one thing I'm going to say, and everyone who's followed me for a while knows I just kind of say it like it is. You can only focus on what you can control. There are people, to be a little more blunt about what Aaron just said, is, yeah, people are going to have subjective views. And those are the ones that you just kind of keep going, right? I tell a story when I'm talking to job seekers about someone who was a speaker that I saw that would always tell a story about how she was at her children's soccer game and there was someone walking around with a basket to everyone, and people would look at the basket and go, and she just kind of go, okay, keep walking. And when it got to the speaker, it was these gorgeous avocados, huge, lovely, and she bought the whole basket, right? And this is a little bit about, she was the target market, right? Who am I targeting? I'm targeting someone who really loves avocados. Someone's going to love your avocados. So don't worry about the people that don't like guacamole. Okay. So it just is something that if it's out of your control and who your target is, you don't worry about the people that are having forming their own opinions and having a subjective view. That's all. So.
Just be careful about telling people that you love their avocados.
Mike, well, see, apparently it means something that I don't know what it means. I'm gonna have to Google it, but I have a new intern that keeps wanting that to be my tagline. Someone will love your avocados. And I don't think that that's probably a good one, but You get what I'm saying?
We'll have an entire webinar on analogies in regards to branding and things like that later, right? Here's another question, and it's probably just a couple questions along the lines of the pandemic, and where some folks have had to take lower jobs or survival jobs, and they feel like it's impacted their brand. How would you recommend some are asking, how do I rebuild my brand after having this sideways portion of my career, albeit, the whole world has suffered it, but more people have taken it harder, and they have to take roles they never would have thought they had to take over the last 12 to 18 months, but now they want to figure out how they can get back, quote unquote. What would you all recommend from a personal branding perspective a person should do or could do? Jessica, I'll ask you to start.
So you show me a person who's never had a jog in their career, and I'm going to show you a person that wakes up mid to late career and hates everything that they've ever done. And I've talked to so many job seekers that are like, well, I did everything right. I did all the prescribed things. I'm now a VP of something, and I absolutely hate it and hate every minute of it. And I'm ready to go do something else, but I don't know what to do. That is going to happen to every single person at some point in time, or the majority of us. People have kids. People, we have pandemics. People have parents they have to take care of and spouses they have to take care of. And recruiters are, I know this may be a shock, but recruiters are human beings too. And they recognize, Cindy, I look at Cindy, she's a wonderful human being. And she knows that you can have a 2-year survival job. Hiring managers know that you can have a 2-year survival job. It's being able to not be apologetic about it. I think people spend too much time. They get into an interview and they spend 30 minutes talking about how they're sorry and that's not really who they are and they don't want to skip it. I'm in this job for a survival job. Let me tell you about what I bring to it that I will bring to this one that I brought to the one before me, because I know my brand and I'm strong about it and I'm unapologetic about my career choices and experiences, because we cannot control how life happens to us, but we can control how we react to life.
And also
Cindy?
always focus on the, I did a mock interview with a friend a while back, and something that I think you all probably know, but when you're focusing on an interview, always spin it positive, right? So, and she would, I would ask her a question and she would go into the story, and then it would start getting to the thing that was a little bit not the best light, or not, an accomplishment. Don't focus on that. Like Jessica said, move past it. Always be focusing on why this 2-year stint is good, and what you're learning, and how you've grown, and those kinds of things. And the other thing is, if you have 1-2-year stint, or 1 or 2 in your career, it's not going to kill you. It's the people that have, 6 months, 2 months, 1 year, that is consistent throughout, and don't have a good story as to why they left and went to another role, right?
I want to tag in on that for a second, because I have a specific example. I worked with somebody who was in medical device sales, if I remember correctly. And the one thing about medical device sales you have to know is there's a lot of ups and downs in that. So you have a lot of places they just don't make it, and the company folds, the startups fold, or you have acquisitions that happen. It's a volatile career area. And she was wanting to shift a little bit, but she had like the 6-month role and the 2-month role, and it was through no fault of her own. She was laid off 3 times, and she had good results. It was as simple as putting in her resume, laid off due to this, company closed, company was acquired and job ended, division was restructured. We put that in, and all of a sudden she got actual interviews, because people can see potential, but they can't see potential in a resume. You have to be, that's something that you have to expand upon when you're actually in the interview. And then Erin also said something in the comments about maintaining relevancy, and that goes way back to even the post 50s. It doesn't matter at what point you are in your career. If you're maintaining relevancy with your skills, you can stagnate, just like we talked about brands stagnating. You can stagnate, you can get there and get complacent and comfortable and not take development courses and not learn, or while you're taking care of your parents or your kid, you can let that consume you, and that can be your 100% focus, and you cannot develop your skills on the side. But there are so many opportunities to be able to do that now through online courses, through volunteerism, whatever that looks like, to maintain those relevancy and skills, so that when you do have the chance to get back in there and get back in the game, that you're still on top of your game.
Great. Next question. We talked about the I and the we, right? We're at work, a lot of us, we're all part of a team. And then when you're looking for a job, you have to show what you did, what results came from you. So how would we communicate that in a manner that would be authentic and not self-centered? Erin.
Yes, I totally agree. In fact, I was just talking with one of my clients who's a senior executive in one of the medical device companies that has actually made it for quite some time. And she was talking about this very thing because we're working on her resume. She wants to move up into the C-suite. And even at that level, people still struggle with their impact and how to talk about that. She goes, well, I see these resumes and they talk about how they were contributing to this project. She goes, I always attack that because I figure they're full of BS. She's a very straightforward person. And so what we want to do is give context. So if you participated, say you participated. If you contributed, say you contributed. Be specific and don't take the back seat. Okay. So if you actually provided a significant improvement in the outcome of whatever that implementation was or project, say so. Your contributions matter. So even if you didn't lead the project and you weren't big cheese, it still matters. Here's what we want to avoid. We want to avoid, well, I did a report once for this project and I'm a contributor. Probably not. So, be authentic, be real. You will have to back it up, particularly if you interview with my client, because she'll poke holes in it. So you want to be able to speak to whatever you have in that resume with authority and confidence. If you feel like you're not sure about that, chances of it shining through very brightly, a big red flash to a recruiter or the hiring manager or the HR individual, pretty high. So hopefully that helps.
Okay,
another
good.
thing, just to tag on to that, another thing to do is use other people to validate. So, my supervisor always praised me for, in every review, I was praised for bringing projects in on time, so that way it's true, and you're using someone else instead of feeling like you're bragging on yourself. So just a short.
Okay, good. I'm trying to squeeze in one or two more questions before we have to go. Do you recommend, so this is sort of a LinkedIn resume, obituary oriented question, Erin, you brought up. So do you recommend adjusting your LinkedIn profile to reflect a more forward-looking approach rather than a historical look? Both. Erin, you're on mute, but I could read your lips. Both.
So, I know, that's why I did it like that, because I didn't want to be like, hey, look at me, I'm going to talk now. So
I'll make a comment myself as an experienced job seeker and LinkedIn guru on TV. I said, a resume can be a marketing doc. It can be. In a way, it should be, right? But I think LinkedIn profiles give you a lot more ability to show your value in a look forward mode. The answer to me is yes, and I'll tell you. And I didn't mention this before, and some of you have asked. Obviously, these three ladies are great resources. We have a lot of other resources in this town of Houston. JS 101 is another place I learned a lot. JS101.org, go to the website, great resources for the job seeker, job search strategies. And that's one of those things I learned from their LinkedIn guru. But there's different positionings one needs to make. And the faster you learn that resume versus LinkedIn profile, the better off there's a tie-in for sure. And I think that involves every other tool you may have at your disposal when you're in a job search or job hunt is you've got to, hey, by the way, you might need business cards again because you might be doing personal interviews, in-person interviews, and in-person networking. I threw all my business cards away. You might need some for those in-person events. So just saying that there's a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of resources. So I don't know what you all also think about resume versus LinkedIn profile and how different or similar they should be. Anything?
I can weigh in on that one.
Okay.
There's people out there on LinkedIn that are selling you that this is the right way to do a LinkedIn profile. And that's because they're selling you something. The reality is whatever works for you is what works. So it doesn't matter if you have bullets or if you have narratives. If it's showing impact and it's showing how your brand, how your LinkedIn relates to your brand, then it is effective. If it is getting you interviews, if it is getting calls, and it is complete, and it is authentic, and it is honest, and it has results in there, it doesn't matter if it's a couple sentences, or if it's a paragraph, or if it is a bulleted list. The key is to look at your resume, to look at your LinkedIn, look at them together, and see if there's a common theme. If there's not a common theme, then something's out of alignment. So you should be able to, your bio, your LinkedIn, whatever you put on social, all of that's done in a professional context should have a commonality or a common theme.
Consistency.
Right.
And relevancy.
And relevancy. Yes. Yeah. Show your value is my term.